The Season 1 endgame starts here, with Locke literally following his dreams, but learning that sometimes your destiny can lead to your doom. Welcome to the Lost Explained episode guide, where we continue to explore and explain the show episode by episode, mystery by mystery. As always, this channel spoils the entire series, so only watch it if you already know the secrets of the island. And please remember to check out the playlist of episodes covered so far in this guide if you haven't already. Deus Ex Machina is the 19th episode of Season 1, and it often gets cited as one of the best of the season, sometimes even of the whole series. Significantly, it's the first episode to ever feature a script written by both showrunners Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse, who would team together for all their future episodes, many of which would provide us with the big mythological stepping stones. Their first official collaboration expertly peels back the psychological layers of the island's most mysterious character, John Locke, a man who has spent most of the season guiding and dispensing wisdom to his fellow castaways, whilst also trying to get them to experience the magic of the island for themselves. However, this episode marks his descent into real tragedy that will mar many of his storylines for the foreseeable future, and set into motion the chain of events that will redefine his relationship with the island. It's an incredibly rich episode, full of foreshadowing and clues as to where this epic was going in the long term. Let's get into it. Up until now, Locke has been presented as the enigmatic hunter, the wise sage, the shaman-like figure who always seems to know more than everyone else. Deus Ex Machina tears that image down. It shows us the cracks in his armour of calm and reveals the broken man beneath it all. It's the first real sign that maybe Locke doesn't have all the answers after all. On the island, he and Boone act on their plan to smash open the hatch with sheer force. It fails miserably and leaves them back at square one.
This was supposed to work! This was supposed to work!
As Locke's faith in the mission begins to waver, so too does the strength in his legs. Is the island taking back the miracle it once gave him? Locke fears that it might be. What follows is a strange, unsettling dream pointing him to a crashed Beechcraft, the crash site of which is soon to become a very vital location in the mythology. For the first time, Locke's core belief is actually spoken aloud and articulated.
The island will send us a sign.
The island will send us a sign.
All that's happening now is our faith is being tested, our commitment. But we will open it. The island will show us how.
What kind of sign will the island send us?
He sees the island as a conscious being, a place with its own will and intentions, and he takes this dream, this nightmare, as proof that it's guiding him towards his next step in opening the hatch. Director Robert Mandel stages the dream sequence much like a horror film, delivering some of the series' most haunting, nightmarish imagery, the kind of surreal subconscious messaging that feels ripped straight out of David Lynch, who just so happened to be one of Damon Lindelof's key influences. The entire episode is soaked in this atmosphere of menace and foreboding. I actually think it's a shame that Mandel never returned to direct some more episodes, because his genre sensibility perfectly captured the darker side of the Lost mythos. The only time the show comes close to capturing this creep factor again is with the cabin sequences in Season 3 and Season 4. Locke is absolutely convinced by his vision, and he ropes in the ever-loyal Boone, whose own vision quest in Hearts and Minds bound him to Locke, and so the two set out into the jungle to literally follow Locke's dream. Of course, Locke misinterprets the fundamental meaning of his dream, but we'll unpack that in detail under the Jungle of Mystery section. What matters here is that this mission isn't really about finding something to open the hatch. It's actually about Locke trying to validate his faith. He desperately needs to believe that everything has been for a reason, and while the show eventually proves that to be true, it isn't the reason that Locke hoped for. And I think he learns here in this episode that the island isn't just about offering miracles and redemption, it also makes demands of people, in this case, sacrifice.
What I know is that this island just might give you what you're looking for, but you have to give the island something.
This is further emphasised by the collateral damage that they find in and around the plane. Several dead bodies that are clad in priest attire. Now, this Nigerian drug plane will later connect Locke's on-island story with Mr. Echo's flashback story, setting up Echo's arrival in Season 2, whilst also teasing other related mysteries such as the Virgin Mary statues that are stuffed with heroin, which lays the groundwork for Charlie's plotline in Year 2, the identity of the corpses, one of whom will become the face of the Man in Black in Year 3, and the plane's general origin and purpose. Quite a lot of mini-mysteries spring off the back end of this discovery. What I think this trek into darkness does is expose Locke's emotional weaknesses and fallibilities in a way we haven't yet seen outside of that one scene at the end of Walkabout. As he tells Jack in orientation, his faith has never come easily.
Why do you find it so hard to believe?
Why do you find it so easy?
It's never been easy!
And the more his confidence wavers in the mission, the more Boone's confidence in Locke starts to waver too. We finally see him struggling to fight back his incredulity as his mentor begins to say increasingly madder things, culminating in Locke's confession of his biggest secret of all.
I was in a wheelchair. What? Paralyzed for 4 years.
Fans often wondered why Locke never revealed this to anyone else, but I think this episode shows us why he keeps it a secret. Even his most devoted follower struggles to believe such an extraordinary claim. Boone likely only keeps following in his mentor's footsteps because the man's dream included cryptic details from his own past.
And who's Teresa? What? Teresa falls up the stairs, Teresa falls down the stairs. You were saying that in the dream. How would you know about that?
There's this interplay going on between belief and doubt, and teacher and student, and I think it's the driving force of the episode. Of course, Boone eventually opens up about the Teresa falls up and down the stairs story.
Teresa. She was my nanny. My bedroom was at the top of this huge flight of stairs. And I would sit in bed all day, calling her on the intercom. One day she took a bad step, broke her neck. I was 6.
Which gives us a little glimpse into his guilt over the privileged, carefree life he once led, in which people waited on him hand and foot. Isn't it ironic then that the man once guilty of treating servants like slaves, which led to the death of one, has now become Locke's servant, with Boone about to die in service of his master? When Boone climbs into the plane and his shifting weight triggers the crash, the result is catastrophic. The plane tips, Boone is pinned, and the dream that Locke had becomes prophecy. This is a big deal event in the series, the causality of which will completely change the character dynamics between John Locke and Jack Shephard, whilst also giving us a cheeky peek into how the mechanics of fate actually work. Some people have to die in order for the causality and consequence of events to ripple forward into the next. Also, Boone surviving one plane crash only to die in another is one of the show's cruelest ironies, and also one of my favourite Lost memes. Meanwhile, the flashback narrative builds slowly towards revealing Locke's defining trauma. It all starts disarmingly low-key, with Locke showing a boy how to play Mousetrap. We see how he has always been interested in games and strategizing, and this younger Locke seems like such a sweet-natured everyman, full of smiles, kindness and trust, all of which will be robbed from him by the final scenes. He is found by his birth mother, Emily Locke, played by Swoosie Kurtz, who I really wish had made a return later. A lot of Locke's flashbacks come to be about his father, for obvious reasons, but I found his relationship to his mentally unstable mother just as compelling here, and I think there could have been another storyline in that relationship somewhere. So Emily makes crazy claims about her son. It seems at this point in his life, Locke is not really looking for magic in the world. He's just a normal dude, but that all changes from this meeting. Emily insists that he is special and that he has an important destiny, and I think this builds within Locke an emotional trigger, the need for that claim to be validated and true. The hope that all of his suffering and hardship that will follow this meeting will not have been in vain or for nothing, that he is part of something bigger.
I want to tell you that you're special. Very special. You're part of a design. You do realize that, don't you? That our meeting, me finding you, this is a sign of things to come.
Upon going to the adoption agency to unseal the records, the agent says something very significant here.
This stuff isn't meant to be, even though it may feel that way. That this probably won't have a happy ending.
Keep that in mind. Of course, as is typical with Locke, he ignores the warning and meets with his biological father, Anthony Cooper, who Kevin Tighe plays with smooth, predatory charm. He seems warm and friendly enough, at first, enough for us to understand how Locke might be taken in by him, even though there's something slightly reptilian about Tighe's playing of the character, the slightest hint that he is able to shed his skin to reveal the true monster beneath. Anyone who was paying attention a couple of episodes prior will remember that Locke already confessed to Walt that his father was not a nice man.
You have a dad?
Everyone's got a dad.
Is he cool?
No. No, he's not.
So that sort of spoiled the twist at the end of this episode, since many of us knew to be suspicious of Cooper's motives from the very start. I myself never doubted that this was going to turn out to be one big con. We see the two men starting to bond, most notably during a hunting trip together. Now, I think Locke's later affinity for the woods and interest in hunting wild animals can be traced directly back to this experience. In some sense, it's to emulate what he admired most about his father, to constantly try to recapture this moment before it was all revealed as smoke and mirrors. I view Locke trying to become the best hunter that he can be is deeply rooted in the need for his father's approval, despite all of the things that Cooper did to him. Because deep down, everyone just wants to be accepted and loved by their parents, don't they? And sadly, this need leads Locke to donate a kidney, only for Cooper to vanish after the surgery. Not too dissimilar to Locke vanishing before Boone's surgery, and this becomes the defining betrayal and trauma of Locke's life. Every chronological flashback that follows this shows Locke becoming more and more empty, because he lost a piece of himself here, and it's no accident that the island later heals him, thereby filling that void and restoring his sense of self-worth. And what does Locke say just before the kidney donation surgery is about to commence?
This was meant to be.
He wants to believe this so badly. Like most things in the series, Locke is actually right, only often in the wrong way. This is meant to be, John, it's just not meant to be in the way that you thought. Because this surgery is actually going to cause you a lot of pain and suffering now, both physically and emotionally, but it's going to save your life in 2004, when Ben shoots you and leaves you for dead in the Dharma pit.
The bullet went in one side, came out the other. I'd probably be dead if I still had a kidney there.
This entanglement with Anthony Cooper here, and in future flashbacks, lays out a path that highlights Locke's history and his patterns of behaviour. He frequently trusts the wrong people, and is often misguided in his beliefs about what fate has in store for him. The adoption agent's words about something not meant to be, despite it feeling that way, will prove to be all too accurate, not just for the events of this episode, but for Locke's entire character journey. There's a small subplot on the island with Sawyer battling headaches that provides a little bit of levity. For a brief moment it feels like maybe it could be Rousseau's mysterious sickness finally manifesting. Do you remember when we spent multiple seasons wondering when the sickness would ever actually show up, and what form it might take? When anyone came down with strange symptoms on the show, it always seemed like it could be an early sign of this fabled infection. And I remember the first time I saw this, that's where I thought this might go. But instead it's just strained eyesight from all of the reading that he does. The real payoff I want to mention here is Saeed making him a pair of improvised glasses. Now it's a small wordless gesture, but it shows how Sawyer is slowly becoming part of the group, so much so that even Saeed, a man whom he shares historical animosity with, is actually willing to help him out. I think it's a lovely understated beat of character development there. The MVP of the episode is unquestionably Terry O'Quinn. He's a naturalistic actor, and every beat he plays feels true, no matter how extreme or bizarre the material might seem on the page. And this episode lets him run the full emotional spectrum. The obstinate leader who seems certain in everything he does, the petulance of when things don't go his way, the doubt and despair of questioning one's faith, that naive innocence of searching for acceptance, and finally, the gut-wrenching devastation of betrayal. Oh, it shatters me every time to see O'Quinn wake up in that hospital bed, realising he is alone, as Michael Giacchino's haunting melody underscores the horrible truth that he has been abandoned once again. We can really see the little boy behind the man here.
You wouldn't do this to me.
It's a truly magnificent, deeply human performance. I think Terry O'Quinn really connected with the man that he was playing. You can also sense this creative tug-of-war going on behind Locke's arc. Damon Lindelof clearly had a deep affection for this character. You can feel the reverence in the way the man is written for the first half of season 1, this tragic but noble man of faith whose belief in the island elevates him above everyone else, as a figure to look to and learn from. But as Carlton Cuse's influence grows in the second half of season 1, you start to notice Locke written more as a fallible figure. It's almost as if Lindelof wanted to paint Locke as this prophet, while Cuse wanted to remind us that he was also just a man, flawed, sometimes misguided, and ultimately desperate for meaning. And that tension between admiration and critique is what makes Locke such a compelling, complex character. And while a lot of this is just my speculation, I do think the writers' room was often split over whether or not they considered Locke a righteous figure. I know many Locke fans would have preferred him to remain in that early year 1 stasis, where he seemed like an all-knowing Jacob character in his own right. The aspirational virtues that he embodied in those moments of helping others and cutting through to the heart of their problems really gave us someone to look up to and admire. But the only reason he can cut through to the heart of other people's pain is because he himself has his own deep wounds, and those insecurities that he struggles with throughout are fairly universal, and it is in fact those very same flaws that made Locke human and relatable. The final scene of Deus Ex Machina is probably among the most iconic moments from Lost, as Locke beats his fist against the hatch door while screaming,
I've done everything you wanted me to do, so why did you do this to me?
This reveals an uncomfortable truth about the character and how self-centered he has become. He's gone from helping others achieve self-actualization to becoming obsessed with his own. And while that's no crime by any stretch of the imagination, he does view everything that has happened with the hatch as being about him. Considering the circumstances, he should be more concerned with Boone's fatal injuries and being there for that poor young man whom he got into all of this trouble. But instead he retreats to the solitude of the hatch to cry, not for Boone, but for himself. Now, I say all this as someone who considers John Locke my favourite character in the series, and one of my favourite characters in all of fiction, full stop. So scenes like this are always difficult to watch for me, but they are important because they remind us that this man we have mostly seen as an infallible shaman, a figure of knowledge and wisdom on the island in season 1, is in fact just as scared, confused and vulnerable as everybody else. It does tarnish Locke a little bit in the eyes of the audience, but it also humanises him at the same time. The point the writers were trying to make here was that Locke is just a man. Identify with him, don't deify him. Some minor mysteries to clear up first, all of which are adequately explained in Year 2. Who was on the other end of the radio?
We're survivors of the crash of Oceanic
Boone,
Flight
get out!
815. Please copy.
Get out now!
We find out in the other 48 days that the voice Boone heard in the Beechcraft was none other than Rose's husband, Bernard, on the other side of the island with the tail section survivors. Ana Lucia dismisses the Mayday call as being a trick of the others, shutting off the radio and breaking the connection. The island wasn't ready for these two groups to meet quite yet. But this episode right here is where the tracks were officially being laid towards the whole tail section arc of Season 2. Where did the Beechcraft come from? In Season 2 episode The 23rd Psalm, we discover that the Beechcraft belonged to Nigerian smugglers posing as Catholic missionaries, led by crime lord Mr. Echo. They filled the plane with heroin, hidden inside Virgin Mary statues, and planned to get the poison out of Nigeria and away from their own villages and communities. Echo's brother Yemi was a real priest who got pulled into their scheme and killed, while the other two bodies are Echo's henchmen, who betrayed him and, unintentionally, ended up saving his life. How did the Beechcraft end up on the island? The show will later establish that the island moves, jumping through time and space to other connected electromagnetic pockets all over the world. When the Beechcraft takes off from Nigeria, instead of reaching its destination, it somehow ends up thousands of miles away on the island, and for a long time this seemed like a bit of a head scratcher. However, the island was probably off the coast of Western Africa at this point in time, probably somewhere in the Gulf of Guinea in the eastern tropical Atlantic Ocean. Beechcrafts like this only have short-range flight capabilities, so whilst it was travelling on a flight path to its intended destination, it must have got pulled into the island's field of gravity, then crashed in the jungle. What is the meaning and origin of Locke's dream? All of the dreams in Lost share that same uncanny, unsettling quality, where the dream characters inside don't quite act like themselves. That's because they aren't. They are all messengers, a force intruding into the dreamer's subconscious and shaping what they experience. There are two main interpretations of where these messengers come from. The first is that they are coming from the Man in Black. The other is that they come from the island itself. Now, for anyone who has watched my video on faith in the supernatural, you will know that I am unequivocally in the latter camp. Damon and Carlton often describe the island as a character in and of itself, not just a setting where the action was taking place, but as an active participant in the story.
Think of the island as one of the characters.
Yeah, the island is the original, is the most important character, you know, and for me, the most exciting episode of the show will be when we get to do the island's flashback, you know, because the island has a, you know, clearly has a sentience.
So to me, the closest we ever get to the island articulating its voice and the writers giving it some kind of an identity is the way in which it communicates with people through the subconscious. It operates on a metaphysical level. Yes, I know a lot of fans believe that the Man in Black is behind the nightmares on the show, trying to manipulate characters into doing things for him. But when you have the power to manifest physically as a dead person from someone's past, while they are wide awake, to be able to instruct and manipulate them face to face, like we see him do with Yemi and Christian and Alex at different points, then there is little need to communicate so cryptically via these dreams that are so often easily misinterpreted and misunderstood. Why talk to his targets indirectly when he is more effective and efficient doing it in person? The island has many tools at its disposal. It creates moments of what we might call chance and coincidence, in which a series of happenstances culminate in a specific outcome, which often directly affects people's lives and changes their trajectory, such as a car accident. It uses the voices of the dead to speak to us, who act as messengers. It exerts influence over objects in order to communicate ideas to those who can read into the signs. And it is capable of direct telepathic communication, a way of influencing a person's choices by manipulating their subconscious and planting ideas, kind of like what they do in the movie Inception. So, unlike the Man in Black, when the island tries to communicate with people, it doesn't speak in plain words, it speaks in riddles, symbols, and imagery, like a form of supernatural cryptography. When decoded correctly, these visions contain real, verifiable information. We see multiple characters experience premonitory and instructive visions like this across the show, sometimes whilst asleep, and other times whilst wide awake. And crucially, we see visions off-island too, far beyond the Man in Black's reach. Whereas the island's influence and reach isn't limited by geography at all. So far in Year 1 we have seen Claire, Boone, and Sawyer each experience some surreal, scary visions that trigger them to behave in a certain way. And we'll see this pattern again with several other core characters in future, including Charlie and Mr. Echo. Even both Ben and Walt will go on to claim that they have been influenced by such subconscious messages, but no character is more defined by dreams than John Locke. In his first dream of the series, we get a mix of imagery from his past and glimpses of a future yet to unfold. Desmond's flashback in the Season 2 finale, Live Together, Die Alone, reframe these events rather elegantly. This dream wasn't about opening the hatch at all. It was actually designed to lead Locke to the Beechcraft and to Boone's death. Now, the Man in Black can't predict the future like this, but the island can. Because the source exists outside of linear time, therefore it knows what must happen. And Boone's accident is the hinge. It drives Locke back to the hatch in despair, pounding on its door, unknowingly saving Desmond's life down there. Desmond was in a deep place of despair, trapped alone in the belly of the Swan, thinking he was forever alone with no way out. Locke's despair relieved Desmond's despair. But had Locke not dreamed of the Beechcraft, then they never would have set out to find it that day. Boone wouldn't have climbed the tree to get inside of it, the accident wouldn't have taken place, Locke would have had no need to return to the hatch at that specific time, and Desmond would have pulled the trigger. The timer would have hit 0, and with no one left down there to push the button, Armageddon would have followed. Desmond clarifies this very idea in the Season 2 finale when he tells Locke,
3 days before you came down here, before we met, I heard a banging on the hatch door, shouting. But it was you, John, wasn't it? You say there isn't any purpose, there's no such thing as fate. But you saved my life, brother, so that I could save yours.
There are even smaller details that deepen this reading. Take, for example, what dream Boone keeps repeating.
Teresa falls down the stairs. Teresa falls up the stairs. Teresa falls down the stairs.
Now this turns out to be a deeply personal memory from Boone's childhood, something that Locke couldn't possibly know about, and neither could the Man in Black, since it is established that he only learns historical information from a person's life if he scans them and downloads their data to use against them later. This means this dream isn't just an invention of the subconscious, nor is it a manipulation by the Man in Black. It runs so much deeper than that, because Locke is seeing pieces of his own past, but he is also tapping into details from someone else's life. So this for me cements the idea that it is the island on the other end of the line, communicating through Locke's subconscious. He's accessing facts and information that exist far beyond his own subjective experiences. And then there is Locke's legs. We know that the island healed him, therefore only the island can take that gift away. His sudden loss of mobility is the only reason Boone climbs up the banyan tree. There is no doubt that Locke would have been all too eager to go up there himself otherwise. Once the purpose of Boone's accident is fulfilled, Locke's mobility returns, never failing him again. As far as we know, the Man in Black didn't have the power to reverse Locke's healing, and that's something that only the island can do. There will be later known instances of the island withholding its natural healing abilities for the purposes of steering the causality of events and character choices. Ben's cancer being the most significant one in Season 3, but we also shouldn't count out Jack's appendicitis in Season 4. Ultimately, the dream was never about finding anything at the Beechcraft that would help open the hatch. That's just what Locke mistakenly interpreted. The point of the dream was to sacrifice Boone for the greater good in order to save Desmond, which is something Locke comes to intrinsically understand by the Season 1 finale, even though he doesn't have the full picture yet.
Boone was a sacrifice that the island demanded. What happened to him at that plane was a part of a chain of events that led us here, that led us down a path, that led you and me to this day, to right now.
Even the figure of Locke's mother, Emily, in the dream alludes to misdirection. She appears to him as she did the first day he met her, and she points to the plane to essentially say, "Hey, look over there, John, follow my lead." This is a subtle clue from the writers that Locke is being led astray, just as he was before. Last time his mother led him into a con with his father, this time her dream cameo is leading him into what will amount to be another con, in which he is used for an ulterior purpose. Because it's not just Boone who was a sacrifice to the island. Locke himself is also a sacrifice, slowly being groomed as a pawn in the island's larger plan. Finally, there's the time-bending element. In Season 5, Locke will actually witness the Beechcraft's crash firsthand. He was there all along, part of the island's history. So in a way, this dream is like a cosmic echo of that event, the island showing him where to go, and also showing him where he is going to go. It's a vision of an event he hasn't lived through yet, but an event that already exists in the island's historical timeline. I know, it's mind-bending stuff when you really start drilling down into it, and I wouldn't want it any other way. The island has a long, complex history with both time and the people who have occupied its shores, one that Locke is only just beginning to tap into and discover. Deus Ex Machina is a Latin phrase that means the god from the machine, or god in the machine, which essentially means a sudden or miraculous intervention from a higher power. This term originates from ancient Greek theatre, where a crane would literally lower an actor playing a god onto the stage to resolve the play's conflict. This is very often considered to be the laziest way of resolving a story, and one that the writers are consciously invoking by its usage as an episode title. To me, the god in the machine is the island, and how it delivers visions, tests, and tragedies that shape the survivor's fates. Locke interprets his dream as a divine message, believing he's been chosen, but Boone's death shows that these interventions aren't always benevolent. Sure, faith can inspire, but it can also mislead, and the title perfectly captures the episode's tension between destiny and free will, and foreshadows how the island's mysterious machine will continue to influence events, often at a cost. Alternatively, the title could also be a reference to Anthony Cooper, because Emily Locke claims that Locke was an immaculate conception, and when Locke tells this to Cooper, Cooper laughs and replies,
Really? Well, I guess that makes me God, huh?
So there are multiple meanings to the title, both narratively and thematically, and intertextually, plus the title just sounds cool. Boone's loss is framed like a biblical test of faith. Think of Abraham being asked to sacrifice Isaac, a father told by God to kill his only son as proof of devotion. In the story, Isaac is spared, but the point is the demand and the willingness to give up what you love most. Okay, Boone isn't Locke's son, but he has become a true friend and confidant. We might even be able to argue there's some surrogate father-son things going on between them. Boone is certainly the only one of the group that Locke directly tells his secret to about being in a wheelchair. Where this diverges from the Abraham-Isaac story is in one fundamental area. There's no last-minute reprieve. That's because Boone's fate was necessary to ensure that someone else lives. There will be many more biblical parallels throughout the show like this, from Jack as a Moses-like figure leading his people to freedom, to Mr. Echo having his own John the Baptist journey. There are lots of metaphors and dramatic parallels that feature in this episode. Here are the top 3 that speak to larger aspects of character and narrative that you might find compelling. Let's start with the mousetrap game that we see Locke demoing to the kid at the start of the episode. It initially seems like an irreverent detail, doesn't it? A way of showing us that Locke worked in a toy shop when he was younger and had an affinity for games. However, this scene also serves a second purpose. It represents what is going to happen to John Locke in this episode, for he is the mouse being lured into a trap by his birth parents. But we can take the metaphor even further, because Locke is also about to be lured into an even bigger existential con by the Man in Black. A con that won't fully take shape until the end of Season 3, but we see the pieces being laid out on the board in the lead up to it. The Man in Black has had Locke marked as his mouse for quite some time. Next, it is worth considering the metaphor of the Virgin Mary statues. Sure, on a plot-based level they are simply introduced to set up Echo's storyline and to provide Charlie with temptation for the second season. But on a thematic level, especially when viewed in light of the events of this episode, they are communicating to us what is happening in the story itself. On the outside, the statues represent faith and belief. However, there is poison hidden within. Just because something presents as holy and divine doesn't mean it has divine intent. In fact, temptation and corruption often come to us in benign forms. Locke doesn't realise it yet, nor do we, but there is something more going on here than meets the eye. And in one of the most powerful dramatic parallels from Deus Ex Machina, we see how Locke is literally and figuratively locked out, in both timelines no less. In the flashback, after the devastating betrayal by his father, he's left banging on the door of Anthony Cooper's house, cut off, abandoned, and denied the connection he so desperately craved. On the island, that image repeats again when Locke pounds on the hatch door, desperate for the island to give him answers and let him in. Both moments capture Locke at his lowest, pleading for validation and purpose, yet finding only silence on the other side. He keeps asking why. I trusted you. I believed in you. I don't understand. Why have you done this to me? These scenes are like a haunting reflection of one another. Locke is always searching for someone or something else to let him in, be it his father's love or the island's blessings. Only unlike what happened with Cooper, Locke is finally gifted with some light from within, the promise of hope and answers, and a sign that he is still on the right path. And he is. Most importantly, this episode's ultimate message is overtly clear by the end. Locke learns, and we learn, that blind faith can lead one astray. Locke is so certain that he has been touched by divine guidance that he ignores every warning sign along the way, and the death of his closest ally and friend is the brutal consequence of that devotion. I covered all this in more depth in the Walkabout episode guide, so I won't linger too much on the messaging here. If you want a more in-depth analysis of John Locke's overall arc, check out that guide, as I get into the weeds of it all there, and it's one of my favourite episodes of the season too, so there's a lot to talk about.
Don't tell me what I can't do.
Of course, we can't complete the episode guide without discussing the most brutal expression of Lost's daddy issues theme. Cooper weaponises Locke's longing for connection, dangling approval just long enough to con him out of a body part. For Locke, whose entire identity is built on faith and trust, that betrayal cuts deeper than any physical wound. And that wound shapes everything he becomes on the island. Anthony Cooper is easily the baddest dad in the entire series. Can we all agree on that? Honestly, I think the relationship between Locke and his dad could have ended right here in this episode, with Locke locked out, and it still had the same lasting impact on the character. If I had one complaint, it's that Cooper does become cartoonishly evil the more often he pops up in the show, sometimes demonstrating casual cruelty towards John in a way that starts to feel a tad overcooked, and like a puppy dog, John just keeps coming back for more and more despite knowing better. So I do start to have some quibbles with this relationship as the flashbacks go on and their paths continue to cross. The Anthony Cooper we meet on the island has finally devolved into full one-dimensional villainy, and while I still love what Kevin Tighe does, the character has lost a lot of his nuance. After all, this was a man who at one point, in his own twisted way, tried to make amends with his son by cutting him in on some money after faking his death. So there are some inconsistencies in how Cooper is written here and there that make him somewhat implausible as a character, but here in his introduction, he is chillingly plausible, using both charm and the promise of love to get what he wants, one of the oldest cons there is. Speaking of cons, Deus Ex Machina continues on the path started in Confidence Man, in its fascination with people being hoodwinked and tricked into making decisions that benefit someone or something else. Because we find out that Anthony Cooper isn't just Locke's con-man father who stole a kidney, he's also the same grifter who destroyed Sawyer's family, sending young James Ford on the path that turned him into the man we meet on the island. This episode plants that connection without spelling it out, although many of us guessed that Cooper would turn out to be the real Sawyer pretty much after the episode first aired. The number count sees Locke mention being in a wheelchair for 4 years, while at the start of his flashback he explains that
Yeah, aisle 8 for regulation, aisle 15 for nerve.
Oh, yes, thank you.
in other words, try aisles 8-15. You might find what you're looking for there. Deus Ex Machina really accelerates the mythology whilst deepening Locke's character and backstory, and sets up multiple threads that will be paid off across Season 2, and of course it begins the show's steady march towards opening the hatch in the Season 1 finale. In my opinion, this is one of the best episodes of Year 1, because it hits every gear that makes Lost special. It's mythological and emotional, evolving a character in the process of exploring the island and its many mysteries, and it stands as one of the foundational turning points in the overall series narrative. Let me know what your thoughts are on the episode in the comments. Next time we'll be covering Do No Harm, where Jack struggles to save Boone's life as Claire goes into labour. It's another emotional episode, but an essential step towards the season's climax, which is now in sight. Please like, share and subscribe to keep this channel alive, because I can only keep going with your continued support. Tell your fellow Losties that I exist, and please check out the playlist of the episodes that I've covered so far if you haven't already. I really want to keep this project going. Thank you for watching. I'll see you back on the island.